Welcome to Design Domination, where you'll learn to become a better, more business-savvy designer so you can dominate your competition. Hi, thanks for tuning in. I'm Colleen Grotzer, and in this episode of Design Domination, I'm digging into 5 business lessons that I learned the hard way. Stick around to learn some business lessons from my embarrassing stories. This will be a bit cathartic for me to reveal a lot of this, or I might end up stressed out while reliving some drama. I'm not quite sure which yet. But like I said, a lot of these things are just straight up embarrassing for me to talk about. And I've slightly touched on a few of these things in other episodes, but I really need to talk about these things because this is part of my journey. And I'm also bringing this stuff up to hopefully help you and keep you from making these mistakes ever or from now on. And of course, sometimes we have to learn things on our own the hard way for them to really make an impact. But I also want to show you how you can totally change your mindset and your business, because once I had all these revelations about my mindset, it was like I woke up, like I snapped out of it, and my business completely changed too. And most, if not all, of my business issues were actually symptoms of a much larger, deeper problem. And a lot of the mentoring sessions I do with designers revolve around mindset issues. And it's so rewarding to see them come out the other side from these issues because I know just what it's like on both ends of the spectrum, the before and after. So many talented designers are doubting themselves and undercharging and putting up with things that they shouldn't. That's what drives me to do what I do every single day. I just don't want other designers to feel like how I used to feel and to put up with what I used to put up with. Okay, so now let's dig into the 5 business lessons that I learned the hard way. Lesson number 1 is don't be everything to everyone. Saying yes to any work that comes your way is exhausting. It really is. It's mentally and physically draining. For years, I did all kinds of design work. I did logo design, I did print design, publication layout, proofreading and editing, email design, email coding, web design, custom web development, brochures, flyers, ads, conference signage, book design and layout, presentation slides. I think there's other things, but I can't remember them all right now. I mean, there were so many. And some of these types of work were things that I did quite often, and others I just did, here and there. But the things that I did all the time, I could do them in my sleep and very quickly. The other stuff took a lot longer than it would take someone who does that kind of work all the time. And that meant that those particular jobs weren't as profitable for me. I mean, for some types of work, like email coding, there were too many things to keep up with. And I wasn't doing that work all the time. So it didn't make sense to invest in subscriptions for email testing, for example. And I also wasn't interested in keeping up with all the nuances with the email programs and the web browsers and the combinations of them, and then the browser specific code to add into the email. I just didn't want any part of that. And I didn't want to expend all of this effort into finding that stuff out because it was something I rarely did. And it just made more sense to hire that workout if I ever got it again. Now, hiring it out was actually not only profitable for me, but the client ended up with a better product as a result. And I saved time. Now, I was busy all the time and I had lots of work, but I felt frenzied from all this different work. I was always switching gears from logo design to publication layout and then to web development. I mean, these all use different skill sets. And then the other thing is, taking on all work also made it hard for me to develop processes. For certain types of work that I didn't do all the time, I wouldn't remember everything that I needed to include as part of the process. For the work I did all the time, I could create a process for it. And I think that taking on any and all work led some clients to think of me as a jack of all trades, master of none. Most clients are willing to pay a specialist more money than they are someone who is more of a generalist. And I also think it made my marketing harder too. My messaging wasn't clear. It was like, who was I helping? What was I helping them do? Right? It was like, oh, nonprofits and small businesses. And, they all use different terms, even when you're speaking to them. And up to a certain point, I hadn't entirely figured that all out, although I kind of thought I had. But that confusion in my head led to clients having confusion. And when there is confusion, there are few new sales. Now, when I got into accessibility in 2016, I didn't think it would be something I even did that often. Maybe I would do it here and there if someone needed it. But I just started talking about that one thing. And I got noticed for that. And I started getting more and more of that work. And less of the work that I didn't want. Now, obviously, accessibility is a more niched area of design. But the fact that I was talking about one thing and how I could help them made a huge difference. I wasn't like, hey, I do this and I do this. And oh, did you know I also do this? And so I became known for one thing, and not just by prospects and clients, but by colleagues. And even though I was always busy and I made good money, I was much less memorable and profitable as a generalist designer. Focusing on one type of work also gave me clarity, and that really gave me confidence. Now, I had confidence about my abilities in the past, but I don't think it came through to clients. And so with accessibility, with having one thing to focus on, I was just able to focus on that and continue to deepen that expertise. When clients came to me, I could talk about how I could help them. And I was really confident about that. And it just felt different. Like I believed what I was saying. And I was enthusiastic about it. And people really appreciated that. But not only that, it actually put me in a different position in the marketplace. I ended up eliminating 99% of my competitors. I started getting almost every single job that I was contacted about. And I was also charging more. No one was balking at my pricing. That was a game changer for not just my business, but for my self-esteem. And I was also doing good in the process of this work. So it was a win-win. Or maybe that's actually a win-win-win. Lesson number 2 is choose who you work with. Another thing that I did for years was thinking I should work with any new client who came my way. I had started my career in the nonprofit sector, and I would continue to get referrals from nonprofits that I did freelance work for. It was a snowball effect. So I didn't really choose them, they chose me. But small businesses would still come across my website and want to work with me. And so I would talk to them and I would put together an estimate instead of just saying no. And I rarely got high value projects from these folks. It was usually like more piddly stuff. And when I think back on it, I'm sure that's because some clients didn't take me as seriously as someone, more specialized in their industry. They probably saw me as a jack of all trades, master of none, and that my work was all over the place. Definitely not a good thing. There were also times when someone would contact me and they just had an attitude, and I would still go ahead and entertain them and put together an estimate. I was more focused on winning work than what happens if I get the work and maybe they're difficult and I don't want to work with them anymore. Lesson number 3 is set boundaries. Now, setting boundaries was a really hard lesson for me to learn. Excruciating, actually. For years, I didn't realize I had an issue with boundaries. In fact, I just never even thought about that word at all. I just thought I had bad clients. It was them, not me. But why was I always ending up with these clients who seemed so nice in the beginning, and then they were so demanding, or they paid late, or they ignored my late fees, or they acted entitled like they were my only client? And the ones that were so patronizing were always the worst. I remember one who said how important it was to pay their contractors on time, and they paid late all the freaking time. Another client who knew of me through a former mutual coworker would even call me at my full-time job to harass me about deadlines for her organization's publication, even though I had yet to ever miss any of her deadlines without her nagging me in the past. And even though this was the first time in 10 years or so that the publication was actually getting done on schedule. Another client who happened to live near me at the time came to my house and threatened me because I would not give him the native files for a project that never included giving him the native files in the first place. He called me a little girl and told me to give him the files. Another client, a longtime client in fact, stood me up for an online meeting. He never even bothered to reply to my emails asking if something had come up and he needed to reschedule. And thankfully, I never heard from him again. A woman who was a prospect once called me and rambled on for what felt like, I don't know, a half an hour without letting me get a word in edgewise. She was super loud. She was overbearing. She really enjoyed telling me about herself. And she apparently really liked hearing herself talk. I, on the other hand, just wanted to get off the phone. But she proceeded to tell me about all these amazing things that she had done and how she had been recognized for that and that she had hired a designer to design a publication for her, but she didn't like their work, so she found someone else. And that designer also did not meet her expectations. And the woman said she had to tell the designer which typefaces to use and, all these other horrible things that she had to do. Well, when she finally shut up enough for me to get a word in, I said I would only do work with a payment up front and a signed contract. Well, she proceeded to scream at me. Yes, scream, telling me that I had just wasted her time. Yes, her time, because she apparently had expected me to do free work to see if she liked it before paying me. And she told me I should have understood that that's what she was looking for after all that she had been through. Really? Okay, I got to take a deep breath. So my point is that I attracted crazy clients. But you know what? This wasn't any different from my personal life either. I had attracted people who took advantage of or treated me like garbage all my life. And after talking with a coach years ago, I started realizing why. And as I mentioned before, I was bullied as a child. And I had let people walk all over me, even people close to me. I was a people pleaser. And when I asked for advice from unqualified but well-meaning friends and family about client issues I was having, I would be told to just put up with it because they were the client and I was getting paid. Well, I had put up with too much from others, so it made total sense that I was even a more willing victim to people who gave me money. I mean, when your sense of normal is people not treating you very well or not appreciating you, then you have set the bar very low. And you take on bad clients, and you put up with things that you shouldn't. And unfortunately, it wasn't until I had been in business for quite some time that I worked with another coach who helped me realize that being treated this way is just not normal and that I needed to set boundaries and how I needed to go about doing that. And let me tell you, it was super scary to make any kind of changes, but I had to do something. I was always frustrated and I cried a lot. I mean, I couldn't take anymore. And I figured some clients would push back. That was my fear. That's why I didn't want to do it. And they did push back. And one client said he would go elsewhere if I decided to still enforce my late fee after he pushed back. Now, that late fee was only a couple dollars. But at this point, I was strong enough to push back on him this time. He was a habitual late payer. And he was a bully. He deserved no favors. No soup for you. But darn it, I deserved respect, so I put my foot down this time. In that scenario, I lost a bad client that day over a few bucks. Some people might think that's completely crazy. It was a huge victory, both personally and business-wise. And ever since I put policies into place and started enforcing the boundaries, I started getting more respect from the good clients, and the bad ones that I had been working with gradually weeded themselves out because I was no longer putting up with their crap. Okay, whew. I feel like I need an intermission after talking about all of that. Okay, so lesson number 4 is know your worth. Okay, so it should come as absolutely no surprise to hear that because I allowed myself to be treated like this, that I was a chronic undercharger. But 20 some years ago, I was charging a lot more than some designers do today. But for years, I got turned down for work from potential new clients because of my pricing. And I would try to justify it and say, well, I'm just one person, and so I could have lower rates than a design agency. They never cared about that. They always took it as, you just don't understand all the work that's involved. And I totally did, and I would say so. And I know this is what they were thinking because I would ask why I didn't get the work, and they would tell me this. I knew I had a lot of skills that a lot of designers don't typically have, like proofreading and editing. And I was really good at checking my work. Clients didn't need to babysit me. Some would hire me because of that. I also happened to have a degree in Spanish and French. Now, I knew I had a lot to offer, but I didn't convey it properly. Why were these beneficial to a client? But I also think that some clients just didn't care about any of these things. I wasn't necessarily marketing these additional skills to the right people. The other thing I did as a result of not knowing my worth was feeling like I needed to convince a client to work with me. So instead of asking about their needs or their problems, I would feel the need to explain why they should work with me or to justify my pricing. And all these things did was scream lack of confidence. And that doesn't build trust with clients, even if you indeed know what you're doing, right? And that you're good at it. They're not looking to take a risk. They're looking for someone they think can do the work and can do it well and get them results. Not knowing your worth also sets a very bad precedent. And that is being hired for being cheap. Clients will come to expect low pricing from you with future jobs. And it's hard, if not impossible, to reset client expectations. Now, I found some clients to be understanding about it, but with others, like anything I said to show the value fell on deaf ears. It's like the saying, new is better than best, or different is better than best. It doesn't matter how much you try to prove your worth at that point. They will happily pay the next new designer or firm more money. And lesson number 5 is trust your decisions. So this is another lesson I learned the hard way. I was brought up with the mentality that mistakes were not good. Anything less than perfect was like a mistake. It was not acceptable. And I wasn't brought up to think about making my own decisions. So I was constantly in fear of doing something that would be considered wrong or, a fear of not getting things right the first time. Now, I've made, mostly good decisions throughout my life, but I always overthink things. I don't do it as much anymore, but hey, they say old habits die hard, right? But with my business, I would second guess myself about, how to handle a client situation, or I'd be afraid to assert myself. And I knew it would be really uncomfortable to do that. And the reaction would probably be unpleasant. And it usually was. So like I mentioned earlier, I would ask well-meaning family and friends their opinions. And they weren't qualified to give business advice. But I still listened to them at the time. Now, of course, asking other designers would have been better. But I would have needed to understand that everyone is different and has different business goals. What's okay for one designer's business is not good for another designer's business. And just because someone else is willing to put up with something that you don't think is okay doesn't mean you should. And it doesn't matter what they think. What matters is how you feel. So instead of making decisions to change the business issues that I was facing, I didn't do anything until I paid a coach who told me to do that. So some of those were expensive lessons too. I hope that this has been helpful for you. And I also hope that you never have to go through any of these things. But I know most creatives are empathetic and many of us are people pleasers. It can be really uncomfortable to do what you need to do to make your business better and more enjoyable. And please, just don't be afraid to do it. It is so much better and easier on the other side. If you need help working through a creative business issue, a freelancing issue, a client issue, get in touch. Go to the website, creative-boost.com, and go to mentoring. And I will respond right away. Are you looking to gain confidence, clarity, and a competitive edge in a crowded marketplace? I offer mentoring, resources, digital products, and courses, including accessibility for designers and web developers, that will empower you to be the design hero, not another order taker. Find them at creative-boost.com and come and connect with me and other design dominators in the Design Domination Facebook group.